to our Thursday evening McCall College Community Education. We're pleased that you've joined us tonight. I'm Dr. Brian Williams, and I serve as your moderator for the Community Education Series for McCall College. And we're very pleased tonight to continue our art education program with Nettie K. And it's particularly an interesting evening because today's Nettie K's birthday. And so we've been having a wonderful time together celebrating her birthday, and we look forward to the opportunity of continuing our painting. And so welcome, Nettie K, and happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. It's been a nice day today. We've had coffee on the lake. Isn't that wonderful? And a nice little, Mexican lunch today and all sorts of things. And check out these new earrings I got today from my husband. Aren't they artsy? Anyway, that's a little personal, but a lot of fun.
We've already got some chatters going.
Oh, good.
Johnny Simmons Johnson is looking forward to tonight's class.
Good.
So we look forward to the class as well.
That's wonderful.
And so I think I'll just turn it over to you, and you can do your introduction.
All righty. Well, if you were with us last week, we started this portrait of our grandson, Oakley, who has recently gotten a haircut and doesn't look anything like this. But I particularly like this photo that I took of him. When I'm going to do a little bit of a little refresher on what was important about the way I took this photograph, because as I look back over my portraits over the many years that I've been doing them, the one thing that makes the portrait successful or not successful has to do with the lighting itself. All right, I've even taken a black and white photo and turned it into a marvelous, colorful photo, a colorful portrait, just because I had the right information with the tonal values. Okay, so on the photo, you can see that we have a very distinct light. This is at the end of the day as the sun is going down. Light on one side, and it's shining beautifully through his eyes as well. And then a dark side, a distinct shadow line on the face that gives us the information as to where the form turns. Okay, so there is a specific area that changes the direction of the face. And so without that, everything looks flat, like your school photos. Now, maybe they're doing a better job of it these days than they were when I was a kid, but it used to be that they just used a lot of flash cubes or big lights, and it washed out every kind of interesting thing about your face. So the shadow is really what makes it interesting and also makes it look artsy or like a painting. All right, so that's what I'm talking about. And so you'll see we kind of got a nice loose start last week. We did about an hour's worth of work on this particular painting. And of course, because I'm sitting off to the side, afterwards I get up and I look at it and I go, oh, okay, things become very askew if you're not right directly in front of your canvas. So that's the number one rule. Make sure you're sitting, you can do this, I can't, but sit directly right in front. In fact, nose to nose, preferably with your subject. I'm pretty close to nose with mine, so that you're not looking down on the subject or looking up at the subject or off to the side, because you will distort it, unintentionally. Okay, and so that's just my main thing on that one. Now, I'm going to give you a little art history here. John Singer Sargent, raise your hand if you know who that is. Okay, John Singer Sargent is one of the best, most well-known historical portrait people in history. All right, so now you may not have known him. You think about Michelangelo and Rembrandt and all those guys. But John Singer Sargent did a lot of the very highfalutin type people and did very large portraits of people. And so we were looking at, what were we looking at? We were looking at Madam X, so check that one out. That one, how long was that? How big was that? 9 feet? I think it was something like 90 inches from the top to the bottom. And so in a long full dress. And so he was the key. So one of his famous sayings, the most well-known Sargent saying was, a portrait is a painting of someone where there's something wrong with the mouth. And that's exactly what I discovered on here, especially from sitting off to the side. So if something goes askew, it's usually the mouth. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do before we get into painting, I'm going to just take a little bit on my palette, and I'm going to come in with, I think, a little bit of kind of a magenta with a little bit of raw umber, just a tiny bit. I don't want to get too dark. And then I'm going to roll over here and make just that correction of what I can see now on the mouth. And so I know I can see that the center line, I seem to have gotten the angle just right, but I needed to correct this little area here. And this corner right here on the mouth is super important. It is part of our expression and our likeness. And then this one comes down like this and up a little bit. And where it looks like he's gotten injections, lip injections, is right here. So I will come back in with a wider brush, and we'll just do not a super wide brush, but a little bit of a wide brush. And I'm going to take a little bit of my lighter tone and come up and push that up into this area right here. Careful not to overdo it, and reshape that lip like this. And now he doesn't look quite so weird. Okay, just saying. Not that he looks weird at all, but you want to make things a little bit more even. And I'll make quite a few adjustments, you know, in the long run. I'm going to put that light down here into the chin, and therefore it kind of corrects that, hopefully, from your point of view. So before we get too far into all the structure of the face and that sort of thing, I want to talk to you a little bit about the mixtures that I use and the materials that I use when I'm painting a portrait, because that's the big mystery to a lot of people. Last week we were very limited in our palette because guess what? I left most of my paints at home and thought they were here, and they weren't. So we used some different colors and it worked anyway. So if you know what you're doing, you can do it with, you know, crayons. All right. So now here's what my colors are. I'm going to give you my secret color mixtures. My first most important, and this is one of the most important colors that I use in people portraits and in dog portraits, is raw sienna. Okay, raw sienna, and that's kind of it's about the color of my hair most of the time. And then next to it, now this is kind of yeah, it's about the color of my hair, so it's a little warm. It's very, very warm. This one is yellow ochre, and so if I mix that with white, which is over here, this mixture down here, I've mixed that in about 4 to 6 levels of tonal. So I've added white. I start with the yellow ochre. I mix a little bit of white. I add a little more white to it. I add a little more white until I get it almost up to a white level. And so that I have something to choose ahead of time, and I don't have to be mixing my colors, all of them, as I go. I've already got that kind of laid out. Now what I've got here is I have the raw sienna, and I've mixed it with cadmium red light. Okay, it's not cadmium red, it's cadmium red light. There's a cadmium red medium, there's a cadmium red light, there's I think there might even be a cadmium red dark. So you want to make sure it's a light. It's a much more orange color, and so if you get a medium one, it just doesn't work as well. It's going to look really weird. It's going to be pinkier than kind of that peach color that we're looking for. So I've got cadmium red light mixed with raw sienna and white. I've added more white to it as I go down until it comes up to almost white again. So there's all these two are probably the most they're the warm tones of the portrait. And then I have a couple of pinks. I've added cadmium red light with just white, and that's that. And then over here, I think that's a naphthol scarlet. Usually I'll have something like an alizarin crimson. I don't have that on my palette today. I don't need that. I've got also the burnt sienna, which is kind of that brick color. And then I have some, I've got some transparent orange in case I need to really warm something up, especially in the background. It might be kind of interesting. So we might use that, we might not, but I want to have it available. Okay, I have a huge blob. Don't put a big blob out. This is really strong. This is the one your cat steps in and gets on your carpet. So, and it will stain everything. This one is Phthalo, P-T-H, oh my gosh, Phthalo, P-T-H-A-L-O, Phthalo turquoise. And I've mixed that with a little bit of orange to get the hazel color in the eye, okay? So it's the cadmium, no, let's see, the transparent orange with the turquoise makes a beautiful sap green that will go into the eyes. Okay, one more time, transparent orange and phthalo turquoise makes a really, really great green for eyes and trees and all kinds of wonderful things. Okay, and so I also have a dark dioxazine purple if we need it. I have a quinacridone violet, and I've mixed the quinacridone violet with a little bit of turquoise right in here and a tiny bit of burnt sienna just to warm it up. And that's a wonderful shadow color, and then I've added a little bit of white to it just for a lighter color, because I want to have some a little bit of really warm stuff with some cool stuff. I've also done just a little more of the teal with a tiny bit of purple to give it a gray tone. And I think I also want to get a little raw umber. This is going to be used for the hair, believe it or not. Blonde hair has a lot of dark color in it, and that's why, you see, look how dark this is down here and how dark that is. Well, when we get into it, you'll see it's really, really gets dark in the dark part so that the light looks lighter, because you have to have that contrast. All right, so now this is the raw umber. I'm going to add a little bit of white to that, and it might come in. Now that is really good. Raw umber is very cool, and it almost looks gray. And so if I use the raw umber with white, you would use that for somebody with gray hair primarily. But the raw umber in the bottom, and then we'll warm it up and we'll do different things to it possibly. But it's kind of an interesting thing. And I might even use that on some people's skin tones. So a raw umber and white would be what I might use on my own skin tones. I don't know if you can even see that. Our cameras are different than, sometimes they distort the color a little bit. It's just the way life is. And so, it's a little bit harder to see. So someday I hope you'll be able to join me in person, and then you'll be able to see the actual real colors. Won't that be fun? Speaking of which, I'm going to be out at Tamarack Lodge this next Tuesday night. So if you're in town and would like to come and join me, I'll be out there on Tuesday night, the 17th of August. And so you can come out and paint and sip with me. That'll be fun. Okay, back to work. And so now I want to come back in and take a look at where we're at. And I think what I'd like to do is begin by thinking about where all these darks are, the darks. Oh, I also wanted to mention this stuff right here in this cup. This is called Neo-Megilp. It sounds like Klingon for something, I don't know what. But it's this is the bottle of Neo-Megilp, and it is it's a medium. You can use liquid, you can use all kinds of different things. This is a kind of a gel medium, and I've put it in a cup. Now, don't stir your paint, put paint on your brush and then stir it up in there. You'll just contaminate it. So what you do is you dip into the Neo-Megilp, and then you go to your paint. So you dip into that, and then you come over. Now, what's that for? Well, it's transparent, and so we did our first layer with a little bit of thinner, okay, odorless thinner, terpenoid, turpentine, whatever. And the second layer, I'm going to add this medium, and it makes things smoother, and it also makes it more transparent. Okay, so if I want it to be super transparent, I add a bunch don't add too much to it, it won't dry right. But anyway, so we're going to go with that. And I'm going to come in, first off, I'm going to go back into our darkest darks, and now I'm going to find where the darkest darks are. Wow, isn't that crazy? So I'm now going into this zone to where I'm kind of shaping things out by figuring out where the darkest darks are. And here is around the outside of the hair. In fact, this hair disappears into the background of the photo. Disappears into the background, and you think, well, that's blonde hair, what are you doing? Well, that's just how we're going to begin this, so that we have some place to go when we light up this blonde hair. I hope. Okay. And so right now he looks a little bit like he has a little bit of red hair, and he doesn't. And so I'm going to put this down here. We're going to come along and begin shaping out the face a little bit with, we can come back in with what's called the negative space, or the space around the subject, and we're redrawing and testing out, giving ourselves a second chance as to where things are going. And I'm just double checking where that chin kind of turns. And now I'm going to come back in with just a little bit of that very, very thin raw umber. Okay. Remember, raw umber is different than burnt umber. Burnt umber is more chocolate, like milk chocolate, and burnt umber is like dark chocolate. So there we go. And that instantly pops the face forward because it's just that much darker. Okay. And then as I move around, I'm going to darken this area up a little bit. I don't want it to be too brown. So this is a little scary. I'm going to come in now with our purple color, which was our turquoise mixed with a little bit of quinacridone violet and a little bit of burnt sienna. That's a weird color, but it'll work. And I think it's a little too purple, so I'm now going to add a little bit more. We just adjust a little more burnt sienna, the brick color. And I hope I don't wreck it. Hey, guess what? It's dry underneath. So if I do wreck it, I just put a little bit of thinner on my rag and I can wipe that right off. Isn't that great? It's been drying for a week. I absolutely disciplined myself not to come in here and mess with it while you weren't looking. Isn't that nice? Okay, so now I've got a little bit of that dark color here in the purple. I'm going to throw a little bit of that purpley brown, whatever mud is on my brush, right like this. And we're going to just kind of push that around a little bit. Now I'm going to come into my medium again. I've just wiped my brush off. I'm not rinsing it off and doing the Bob Ross, swishing it around in a big waste paper basket. I'm actually coming in and I'm realizing this is nice and rosy along with that purple. And if it's too thick, I just wipe it off and kind of scumble it back. It's got a nice warm dark color. Where else do I see that? I see that on the lip right here as it turns, and then I'm looking for a few different spots. This is a very deep shadow, but it's warm, so I've got that warm shadow, and it begins to push that eye back just a little bit. I don't want to get too many lines on this little guy's face because the more lines and weird, strokes you have on it, the older he looks. And we want to keep his youthfulness. So that's what my goal is on this, is not to overdo it a little bit. I'm going to come underneath here where the nose turns right there. I know it's kind of confusing when you're hopping around, but it's a little bit like leading an orchestra, okay? You can have sectionals where you say, all right, trombones meet on Thursday night. But when you're painting a portrait, you are really, working the entire thing all at once. So I'm moving around quite a bit. Now I'm going up into a middle tone, a little bit middle tone, kind of a peachy color right in the middle of our first mixture. And I'm going to come along next to this really dark area right here. And I'm going to pop that up, and it still feels just a little bit too light. So I'm going to come back in and get a little bit darker. Slightly darker than that, somewhere right in the middle. let's see, yeah, that's it. And it's still a little peach. And then we'll put that in kind of like this. Okay, now I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to take those two tones very carefully and wiggle my brush back and forth between the lighter part and the darker part. And it begins to just carefully, I hate to use the word blend, it merges the two shapes together. Do we have any questions yet?
Not yet.
Okay, good. I must be doing a good job at explaining it. Okay, good. So now I'm checking to see how that shape comes into here and then where that light moves in. This is very, very warm, and so I'm going to move up into our light yellow ochre with white and find this shape. Check this out. I'm going to come under the eye, and I'm going to put that there, and then I'm going to come in over here and begin to find the form where the light hits. This is the really exciting part. And when you're painting it by yourself, you might not jump quite so fast into these this light, but I like sharing the excitement with you, and I know it can, you know, if you do it in such a meticulous, drawn out way, it can be like watching, you know, wallpaper sit and paint dry. Okay, so there is this kind of a lighter. Now, right next to here, I've got this little part, which is just part of the little muscle, comes down on the face like that. See how important that little muscle is right there? Really important. And then I'm going to take that nice light and again put that on that chin. It just seems to be super important right there. And then this part right here, how far off is it from here? It's about the same. So now this part I'm going to also brighten up with that beautiful yellow ochre and white and create the shape of that by really observing the way the light hits that muscle right there. And I can come down and begin to shape the top part of the muscle of the mouth. Now this side is lighter than this side. Don't put it all up in the same. If the light's coming from one side, of course it's going to diminish as it comes across the face. So be sure that you don't just say, oh, it's light on the top part of the lip, I'll put it on both sides. That's not going to work. And then up here, I have the muscle that comes across that cheek. Wow, isn't that exciting? So I have this muscle. This is a really important muscle that kind of defines, it's actually part of the nose, I think. It feels like it's part of the nose to me. And then it connects up that little, that's not going to be quite that light, but that just to show you what that is. And then it'll come up into the forehead, that same kind of tonal value like that. I'll drop this down, hopefully accurately, that would be good. I'm going to drop this nice light down center of the nose and begin to pull that out just a little bit like that. Okay, now the next thing, while I'm onto this is the super amazing part. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit up there, up and around the, we got to put that shadow back into the eye a little bit. Now, one of the things that I can do if I paint over an area that I don't want to have happen, I'll take a Q-tip and I can reshape and regain an area by just taking my Q-tip, since it's dry underneath, and I can find that shadow again. But that's just one of the little techniques that I use. So then I'm going to come in with the light there. I've got, oh man, the light across this little puffy eye as it comes down like that. And then we'll just shape out a little bit of the cheek. You don't want it to be a hard line because it's turning back into space. Anything that turns back into space that's round, you don't want a hard edge. One of the #1 mistakes that portraitists make. Oh, I'm going to paint the background black and paint the side of the face tan and butt it right up next to each other. Now you want it to kind of be a little bit diffused, if possible, because if it isn't, it just looks like a paper doll cutout. Okay, so there's that. Now, across the eyebrow, that bone sticks out, and you pick up a little bit of light there. And then up here above, this one, not quite as bold, so it's thinner, and I'm bringing it in like that. And then, oh man, down here, where do I see the same tonal value is down here underneath the neck. Really bright right there and warm. And what happens if I want to make that t-shirt? Do I use the same color? No, I don't. I use a, what I do is, this is a very warm golden white. And so when I go into the t-shirt zone, this is going to be crazy. I'm going to grab some teal with white instead, and I'll put a teal with white ooh on the t-shirt. Isn't that cool? So yes, in essence, it really is cool. So I'm putting a t-shirt in a teal white, or I might even use a lavender, but I don't use the same, color as the neck. That would be silly. So I've got that going on. I've got this teal and white, and then I'm going to take a little bit of a little white, a little bit of purple, magic purple, so it makes a little bit of a light lavender color for the shadowish area over there. So I've got kind of a lavender with that butts up against the, and I got to make it a little bit darker, that butts up against this teal, so I'll go a little bit darker there. There's a shadow of a lavender, and I could bring it in a little bit darker than that. Let's find it. There we go. Okay, a little bit darker. If it's too purple, I add a little bit of turquoise. Okay, just a little bit. So that looks good. And then it should connect up with that shadow right there. That. And then I'll come around, let's see, right about here, and kind of make this part of the neck right there. I don't want to get too colorful on this, because I want it to be mostly about the face. So I'm going to come back in and just kind of diffuse this color out just a little bit with my little paper towel. And if I want to do more later, I'll do more later. But then I can come back up with a little bit of white, with the yellow on the, or just some white with just a tiny bit of yellow. And we'll just take that along the edge of the t-shirt. How about just straight white with whatever's on the brush? And we'll just kind of bring it up a little bit that way, like this, like that. Okay. Now, what's wrong with this? This and this look like one of those, two-tone cookies. So I'm going to wipe off my brush. Oh, first I've got to get a color under here. So let's get a little bit darker. One more time, I'm going to put a dark kind of a reddish color. Get that right. And then we'll fuse them together. Fuse them together. I'm going to go back in with my dark purple color and a dark kind of a little peachy rosy color, and then I got to pull that in there like that. I got to fix that a little bit. And so then I wipe the brush off again. Do I have enough to work with? I think so. And put a little bit of this. That's a little bit bright, so we'll back up a little bit. It's always about adjusting. If you can't adjust, don't paint. You've got to just put something down, and that the first stroke's always right. The second one you just have to adjust with the third stroke. So we're going to come back in and take our brush and now lay it flat and wiggle it back and forth across right here and fuse those two areas together just a little bit. Yeah. How are we doing? Are we good?
Doing fine.
Yeah. All right. Now I'm going to connect this over here with a little darker. That's the raw umber with very little white. And I think I'll move up with just a tiny bit of our yellow. There's a lot of little tweaking going on. Then I'm going to come back in, and one more time I'm going to define this dark with a little bit of that raw umber. Maybe just a little bit of Let's see what I've got here. I want it a little warmer, so I'm putting a little bit of burnt sienna with raw umber there. You know, play with your paint, you guys. You got to learn what your colors do. And all right, now I'll do this at home. Okay, now where's our shadow that we're missing? I'm going to put in just a tiny bit. I've got this kind of muted, weird grayish purple color right there, and I'm going to make that a little cooler right there and across where that eye folds. This and this now I see is going into the dark a little bit more. So you got to be careful. It's a kid. You don't want to have a bunch of weird dark things going on here. He's got spiky hair now. Not on this picture. We'll have to do him with spiky hair too. That'll be fun. And then this part right here got a little purple to it, and then you see how that just curves around there. And this is the weird shadow that we haven't really gotten in yet, which is the darker purple. I don't know if I want to make it quite as dark as it really is, because it's extremely dark there. And this area here we have only in the warm tones. So let's get a transparent, a little bit of that transparent purple again. And we'll put that underneath a little bit there. And it feels a little bit too purple, so we go back and warm it up a little bit. A little bit of warmth. So your shadows are not always super cool, you know. They're not dark, black and white. That's not what shadows are. They're usually warmer than you think. So don't just put a lot of gray and hope it all works out. It needs to have something else. It needs to be a little bit of warm, have a little bit of a peach or orange or cadmium or something thrown in, maybe a little bit of that burnt sienna, that kind of thing. That always helps. Into your shadow, purple with a warm tone. And then, okay, that's looking like we're getting our structure down a little bit. And let's see, that is going to come up. The hair is going to come down a little bit further there. The other thing you want to be careful is not to make this too dark. This philtrum thing, you know, this little shadow right here. I'm going to diffuse that a little bit with the paint around it so that it doesn't look like there's a hole in the face. And put that in. Be careful about the nostrils too, because it can look like a big holes in your face. So you got to be careful of that too. All right, now I'm going to come up with a little bit of that lighter value around the edge of the nose there. And I'll put the nostrils in. Don't worry, there will be some nostril there. And that picks up a little bit of light right like that. And then we come down like this and add a little bit more light around that shadow, just a little bit. And I'll fuse it together very, very carefully, a little bit at a time. Now, there's also a really interesting reflected light that comes underneath here, okay? So this, I think the hardest thing in the beginning was to learn how to connect the head to the neck. You know, that's a tough one. So I have to be very aware that there's certain areas that, like, what's happening here? Well, it's a reflected light that comes up from the t-shirt or whatever, and it kind of lights up the bottom of the face a little bit, like a little glow. I'm barely touching the canvas with my brush, okay? Barely. I'm not adding a bunch of paint and slapping it on. I'm just glazing and grazing the top layer of paint that I've laid down, painting into paint, and I'm glazing it into what's underneath, and then I'll just keep messing with that a little bit. Don't overblend. That's really key to not making your painting look like a Barbie doll. You know, you gotta watch out with that overblending thing. So back into a tiny bit of a shadow around the mouth, and then I'm gonna make this kind of, oh, that's a little cooler there, a little darker. I lost some of his face there for a sec, so whoops, not that dark. You gotta come back, wipe it off, come back. Now you can sort of see the shadow a little bit, and then I'm gonna blend that in very, very carefully, wiping. I'm barely changing brushes. I don't think I've changed my brush, have I yet? Probably not. I'm just using the same brush to kind of work that in. Now, we're gonna realize this is really very severe right here. We've gone from light to dark. So what I need in the middle is a middle tone. And so I'm gonna lighten the middle tone up between the light and the dark. And I peached it up. I put some of that wonderful pink tone right on the cheek, and I think I'll pull that over to here a little bit. Let's see, where else am I going to go? This feels too dark, so I'm going to peach it up right there. And this feels really quite warm underneath the eye here. That feels too warm, but it starts out that way. What really feels warm is the white of the eye. So I'm going to back that up a little bit with a little bit of that teal, I think, just a tiny bit. You don't want to make the whites of the eye white, because they'll just bug out. So that's just light teal right there. And I'm beginning to shape that little area there, and I've got a tiny bit of light teal right there. Coming down across the eye. Very seldom do you see the entire cornea or the iris, the colored part of the eye. You don't ever, rarely do you see that. So, unless somebody's looking at you like this, you usually will see it will cover a lot of, or some of the cornea, and that's what gives us expression a little bit. It looks like he's gotten socked in the eye, so I'm going to take my newly wiped off brush, and I'm going to begin pulling that shadow in a downward motion like that, and kind of manipulating it around a little bit like this. And then we'll get this running back and forth. I know it looks a little weird. That's kind of where we're at. I might need to open that eye back up just a little bit. I'll come down, find where this goes. It's tough when you're off to the side. Whew, mercy. I'm going to figure this out later on. I'm going to go, what did I make? Okay, now I'm going to get a little thicker paint when I go to the highlight. This time I'm not doing a thin paint. I'm doing a thicker paint on the highlight of the nose. Anything that sticks out, you want it to stick out, you put thicker paint on. See that? I just put a nice thick chunk of paint there. What else do I want to have stick out? I want to have maybe this muscle stick out a little bit more, so I'm going to put that out like that. I want that to come forward, but not right on the edge, so I'm going to pull in a little bit there. This cheek's got to come up a little higher. So I've got thicker paint right there. The nose, the bridge of the nose is sticking out a little bit, so I'm also going to put a thicker application of paint as it comes forward like that. Blend that down, and then another round of that super thick paint right on the forehead. You can get really chunky with this if you're into Impressionism. It's a lot of fun, where you just really get, big globs of paint wherever it sticks out. A lot of people will do that. A lot of formal portraitists will do that sometimes. It's not good for fancy women, but it's kind of an interesting thing for men with character. Okay, now what else do we see? I'm going to step back for a sec, and I'm seeing this eye is kind of weird. We don't have this part of the top lid. It's got to come up in its value, and it's light right there. And this needs to turn. So I'm thinking about it as though I'm sculpting it with my paint. So I push the brush strokes in the direction. I don't just fill it in with color. I'm thinking about how this is changing shape and how it moves. And so now I want to lighten this up right here. and see how I'm going in the direction of how that cheekbone is going. And then I'm wiping my brush off, and I'm going to merge that light into that pink again. Keep adding layer after layer after layer until you're happy. That's for sure. Okay, now the next thing we'll do is we're going to lighten up the lower lip, because the lower lip sticks out and catches more light. And so now I'm in with this lighter pink from our skin tones right there. And then I'm going to go back in with my Q-tip and take a clean Q-tip and find where that is there. And I've lightened it up, and then as it turns, it's like a fold of fabric, really. So you don't want to just make it one solid color if you can get away with it. And then I'm going to bring in middle tone like that. Looks like he's got a little bit of that on the upper lip too, and a little bit of a darker color as it turns around. So be careful. It really is a variation of a skin tone that you're making your lips for anybody other than women that are wearing a lot of makeup. Okay, so it's not red, you know. I mean, that could be even a little bit too peachy, but it's not red. It's a rosier version of your skin tone. So it means you're adding a little bit of red to a skin tone in order to get your mouth the right shape. That makes sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay, now this goes back up in here. We're going to blend or fuse that together, marry that together. It keeps its identity, but it's becomes kind of one kind of a subject, but it turns by not blending all of it together into one big honking piece. Okay, up in here I've got more yellow. Now, what did I promise the last time? We were going to do hair. What am I doing? I'm messing around. I hope this is interesting to y'all. Fascinating, isn't it? Now, I also need to make sure that this is not too, oops, I just took out my shadow. A lot of oopses when you're painting. Oops, oops, oops. I don't want to lose that really amazing dark shadow there. Shadow defines the form. Okay. Down here, and then I need to find all of the nose is missing. There. And I gotta make this a little cooler right there. And push that eye back just a little bit.
Oh, we've got a new chat.
Wonderful.
And Chance O'Brien has joined us, and he loves those colors on that palette.
Yay.
So appreciate his comment and watching tonight. Thanks, Chance.
Okay, now I'm going to come in with just a darker value and hope I can find that nostril from this angle. I don't want to make that too cool. I just did. I'm going to come back in with a little bit of our first mixture of that of our skin tone to add to it, and it still looks now I've got to cut it back out a little bit right here with that lighter value, and be very careful as I do. Swing that across that, and I think lighten that up a little bit more. I don't want to get too picky on you guys. And we'll go up here and shape out that nose just a little bit better. There it is. Okay, I found it. And then this, since I've got that on my brush, I'm going to keep going with that. His eyes look a little bit on the red side of the inside, so I want to pull back and put a opposite little bit of the teal there. That opens it up a little bit there, and I'm going to open up this one just a tad. And of course, when I go back in, then I'll even them out when when I actually go in to finish this piece. Let's do a little bit more fusing of that. I'm just dragging that brush very lightly across this, and then kind of fusing it together just barely, barely, barely. that. Anything look weird? Yeah, a little bit. That looks weird. We'll get there. And then I'm going to push a little bit of that dark green, which was our turquoise, mixed with orange. Turquoise and orange, making our green color right there. And I'll come back up in here a little bit and get that dark value there. Okay, there's that. Now, let's get in.
Before you move on to the hair, one of the things it seems like it's a challenge is to keep them young.
Yes.
And so we're dealing with a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what your techniques are when you're worried about bringing them, about the wrong age or the right age.
Right. Okay. So this is something that we talked a little bit about last week, and I'd like to refresh. Now he looks about 12 to me right now, I think, on this piece. And part of the reason for that is that, normally I'll do some full-on measurements, and I make sure that I'm all, super accurate every time I do this. But this measurement, right, I think that one to here is accurate, but from here to here is too long. I'm going to correct myself. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So because if this is too long in here, and we generally will do that automatically, we'll make that a little bit too long. The longer we make that, if we do it 1 millimeter too long, it will age them by about a year every millimeter, okay? And maybe more, If you do 6 millimeters, they're gonna look 90. So we need to be very aware. And, this was, I used to have police officers come into my studio down in Pasadena, and I'd say, oh man, this is many, many, many years ago, and I would be painting, and I'd say, oh, every kid I paint looks older than he is. And they said, hey, we need somebody to do age progression photos, or drawings. You could just draw them the way you see them, and they'll be totally age progressed. And so they really tried to talk me into coming in and doing that. I said no. Okay. Anyway, this is how Oakley's going to look when he's about 12. Okay, just saying. But the area that we have to watch out for is this area from this measurement to here. Generally, it's the chin. I think we've got the chin fairly close. But it's these lengths right here. That one to there, that one to there. We'll generally make them too long. And that's what happens. So watch out for that. Okay. Good. All right. So now I'm going to come back in. Our main colors for this blonde hair are going to be, we're going to have our dark raw umber for the darks. And I'm going to come in like this. Raw umber, and the raw umber is going to set off the blonde. It's the shadow part. And we'll come over here. I'm going to see. I know this still needs to be darker in value, but for right now, I'm not going to worry about that as far as the face goes. And then we're going to come down this, and I'm just kind of swirling it around. There are a couple of different techniques of doing the hair, and one way of doing it is to take a brush and make stripes of like the highlight stripe, the next stripe, and then just fuse it together. But I don't, that's just one way if you want to play around with that. That's kind of fun. I'm going to try a little bit of raw sienna and hope his hair doesn't look too, no, it's going to look too red, I can already tell. So raw sienna will make your hair look red. So switch over to yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is much more in the blonde range. And so here's our yellow ochre that comes in as our secondary tone. And I'm just taking, this is a big fat filbert that I'm using. And I'm doing a middle tone over the dark. So we start with the dark, we move to a middle tone like this. Got a big blob of paint on there, that's good. Middle tone, I'm using some medium on there. And then if it looks too green, you're going to have to add something with a little bit more of a reddish tone to it. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna with, yeah, that's it. burnt sienna with white. That's a bit of a fleshy tone, and that just kind of gets it set down a little bit. And I'm just flipping a little bit of this hair back and forth. And then I'm going to come into our yellow ochre and white, and that's what I just did right here. Yellow ochre and white in that very light blonde area, and I'm going to pull that in and kind of fuse it together just lightly. And pull a little bit of another swift little curl. I don't want to get too fussy with it. I don't want to keep painting every single hair. Otherwise it looks artificial. You drive yourself crazy. It can also look like a wig, and so we don't want to do that. Notice how I've got a little bit of that skin tone up into the hairline up in here. So if I fill that all in, you know, that causes a problem. I want to have a little feeling. In fact, I might even come back in here with a little bit of our skin tone and put that in there like that. I don't want him to look like he's got a receding hairline either, but I want to start that out with that. Go back in and put a little bit of that darker element right in here like this. That looks so weird at this point. But I have a little bit of that to where the hair is growing out of the skin, not just plunked on there. You know what I mean? You don't want it plunked on. So now I'm going to put that light blonde. We save that blonde for the last strokes rather than, oh, he's got a light blonde here, I'm going to just paint it all with this light yellow, ochre, and white. That's just the highlight. You can see how it looks nice and blonde just doing it, just with that dark. Look how dark that is. It's super dark back here. But you need that dark in order for it to look as though the hair is light. You got to have that contrast. That's how we know how good things are. Sometimes when we go through dark things, the light stuff looks pretty good. So the contrast is what makes it actually look as light as it is. Isn't that interesting? Yes. So, and it gets darker as it goes back into space. That. Okay, I'm liking that. I think I am. And then I'll just throw some. So if I want this hair to look light, okay, everybody, this is going to be fun. How much time do we have, Dr. Williams? Are we getting close?
We're 8 minutes to the hour.
Okay, good. All right. I'm going to take a really big brush. Yeah. I'm going to do something a little bit weird. I'm going to come in with, a little bit of this orange, a little bit of dark purple, and a little bit of orange. Okay. I'm going to make the outside area. You see how I put that blonde stroke in there and you couldn't see it? Well, now I'm going to make a dark value into the background, and this is where the background is really important. Now, it drives my husband crazy that I will do the background after or in the middle of when I'm painting. But sometimes I don't know what I'm going to need. And in oil painting, when you're doing portraits or still life, often you don't work it from the very back to the front. If you're doing a landscape, however, a lot of the technique is to work the top to the bottom or from the distance to the foreground. In portraiture, it's different in that you're working kind of the whole thing together. All right, so I'm putting this in, and I'm making this dark value around the face so that the hair will have something to be worked into. If I put that on ahead of time, it'll be too dry for me to work the hair into, and that's why we do it that way. If by the time I do the hair, there's no place for it to go. So I have to have this dark, and I can even do this over on the other side too, but that might be interesting if I just kind of work that in. But it's supposed to be dark in there, so I'll probably go lighter over on that side. Okay, now I have something to put that hair into. Does that make sense? I've got wet paint that I can now take my paint a little bit. I want to go into a little bit of a darker. I'm going to take a little bit of raw umber just for fun and put it into my yellow ochre. This gives me a middle tone right here. Okay, so yellow ochre with raw umber. If I mix it with raw sienna, then he's going to look like a redhead. And that's not what he is. So put a little bit of that, and then I'm going to throw a little bit of this darker value down into right here. That's raw umber with a little yellow ochre, so that it's not quite so light, but it's a little bit darker as it goes back behind his neck a little bit like that. And then as it comes out, like this, I'm going to kind of just soften the edge of his face into the hair a little bit, so that it looks like he's not paper doll. And then I'll come back in with this yellow ochre with white and start flipping in some of these little highlights like that. And it's set off into the dark. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Ooh, I get excited. You know, it's like somebody else is painting it and I'm watching. It's like, how did that happen? That little effect is so fun. You can get it even lighter by throwing in, and this is just a little scary, a little bit of our turquoise. Okay, turquoise and white onto the brush. What would happen if I did that? Look at that. Turquoise and white onto the brush, and you can get a little bit more highlight right up into where the light is hitting right there. Turquoise and white. Oops, just lost my paper towels. And turquoise and white right there. Just kind of lights it up a little bit like that. Okay. Into the shirt. Okay. And I'm going to take that same texture right there. Notice I haven't put any eyebrows on him. They just kind of happen a little bit. You be careful when you're painting a kid. Don't put heavy Groucho Marx eyebrows on them. Oh my goodness. Even if they have them. Okay, be careful with that because it can just really age them fast. So I might just put a slight little indication, just barely, tiny bit. That gives them some expression. Isn't that lovely? Okay, I'm going to take this dark, blend that in a little bit more. So, okay, I know we're getting close. I want to darken this part up just a little bit more. I know it's darker, so I'm darkening up that shadow just a little more. So when you're ordering a portrait, now this has been less than, 2 hours. It will take me upwards to, oh my goodness, 20 to 30 hours to do a proper portrait. Oh, I was going to bring one today, wasn't I? I was going to bring one of my portraits, and I forgot to bring it. Good. But these studies are really kind of neat too. I kind of like the fact that they're not too overdone. You know, they're just this light, beautiful, wispy. In fact, I almost like them better in some ways than full-blown formal portrait where you just, every little button, every little thing. It can get a little bit too much. So now, I think what we'll try to do once I get this piece done, when we do our final recording, to YouTube, I'll post it. I'll post the final photo of the painting if anybody would like to see that when I get to that point. But I'm going to darken a little bit around the eyes so that they pop out a little bit more. And we'll get there. That really helps. And there we go. Shape it out a little bit. There. Good. Any other comments over there?
Paola has come back.
Hello.
And he has joined us.
He or she.
So he or she might, excuse me, I'm not sure.
Tell me
And we'll sort that one out. And we appreciate the folks that come back. So that's great. So
I just accidentally gave Oakley mascara. Now he'll really look like a girl. Okay. Put a little bit of blue in there. Okay. Well, I do hope y'all are enjoying this, and I know I am. This is a lot of fun. Really a lot of fun. It's so much fun knowing that you're there and you're listening and you're, you know, paying attention, I hope, and just kind of enjoying it. And that makes it worth something. I hope you've learned something good that you can use in your own artwork. And and then next time, you guys, we are meeting next time, I hope. We're planning on doing some sunflowers, which is what we're going to be doing out at Tamarack. I'm going to be doing some sunflowers out there. We'll do sunflowers in a blue vase in a very loose style. So I'm going to be doing it's going to be very different, you know, not photorealism, but how to be loose in your painting. I hope that will be helpful to you as well. Yeah.
I think you've got a little example of that.
I do. Let me just grab
take a
it real
moment
fast.
and bring that over.
Good.
And this again will be at, and the date next week is
The 17th of August at 6 o'clock, and you can sign up. I think it's Tamarack, Idaho, all one word, Tamarack, TAMARACK, Idaho.com/events. And so we're going to be doing something. Hopefully you can see that a little bit. Can you see that one, Brian?
I can, yeah.
Okay. And we're doing them on long, skinny canvases. So let's go this way.
And this is just a draft.
This is just a super. I just did this one really fast this afternoon, and when we do the final one, it's even going to be better. But yeah, this is just my first draft of what we're doing on Tuesday, and it's going to be really fun.
Now, if someone were to want to build this, what videos have you done in this series that might help them prepare for this this piece of art?
Actually, there is a video. I'm going to do this one again next Tuesday, next Thursday. But in preparation, I do have one video on, I think it's sunflowers in a blue vase that I did probably 3 years ago, and that's in oil. This is actually acrylic, you guys. So it looks like oil, but it's actually acrylic, and so it's just going to be really nice and fun and loose. And what the advantage of doing it in, like I love painting in oil because it's just so buttery and you can mess around with it and shape it like you've got wet Play-Doh. But with acrylic on this one especially, I start out with, you know, I just put all these beautiful colors on there and it dries, and then you just keep adding layers. So I started out with painting the flowers dark orange, and then I add layer after layer after layer as each layer dries. So you can start with this dark orange, and then the yellow, and then the bright yellow, and then it just gets, you can do that in one sitting rather than wait 3 days in between layers, which is what you have to do with oil. So
another one of our viewers, Feinha, says she loves sunflowers. So next week we're going to do a preparatory piece for the paint and sip at Tamarack Hotel. And so I trust that those that enjoy flowers will come back again next week and enjoy it. And I think the still life that we did early on, isn't that our number one? Is our still life? Wouldn't that help them set
that
up
would help
the job?
For sure. The first one, which was on, I think that was episode 2. The first one was just talking about different things that we were going to do. The second episode talks about cylinders and that sort of thing. Really would help for you to kind of figure that out, because we're going to be doing a vase. Okay, so that's good. Yeah, good idea.
Well, again, thank you, Nettie K, for a wonderful evening, and we appreciate you working on our grandson Oakley.
Yeah.
And we want
to thank you for joining us tonight. There's been a wonderful community that's gathered for community education. And McCall College thanks you for coming and being a part of this. These videos are being broadcast on Nettie K Studio. They will then be edited and placed on YouTube /McCall College. And you can get the entire series that's available on the McCall College site. And so we would welcome if you were to go on and take a look at those videos. And our expectation is that these videos will then re-arrive on the Nettie K Studio site when Nettie K has a chance to edit them up as well. So we look forward to that. And so thank you. We trust you'll join us again next Thursday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time when we'll do sunflowers. And I'm sure you would enjoy that. And so thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again next week.